Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host, Chet, and today we have one of my favorite guests to have on the show, and that is the amazing Mitch Horowitz. Mitch has a new book coming out called Modern Occultism. There's a link to pre-order the book in the podcast description. Daydream Believer, I think that was his last book, was excellent. All his books are great. And he's just a super intelligent guy and really fun to talk to. And I almost forgot. I can't forget to promote this because I'm so excited about it. Mitch and I are going to be sharing the stage at the Philosophical Research Society in Los Feliz in LA. And it's going to be Wednesday, September 20th at 7 p.m. We're going to do a presentation. I'm going to have like a slideshow of my artwork, talk about that a bit, and talk about dark art and the connection between dark art and left-hand path spirituality and all kinds of things like that. And I am honored to be asked to do this and excited and super stoked about it. It's going to be very fun. Also, Mitch, the following Friday, 2 days later, on September 22nd at 7 p.m., he's going to be releasing his new book. So just wanted to make sure I promoted that because Mitch and I both kept forgetting the dates in the interview. And there will be links in the description of this podcast to purchase tickets. Let's see what's going on with me. I am absolutely exhausted. I am painting these I've got 8, 9, 10 more of these little paintings to finish. These mini 2x3 paintings I'm finished, and I'll probably put them on sale Friday or not. I don't know. I'm always overly optimistic about when I can get things done. Probably next week, but you can see I got some finished ones here. If you're watching on YouTube, let me change the focus. Can I change the focus? Yeah. There's one. There's another. They came out pretty nicely. I made some aliens. So these are going to all have glow in the dark elements painted on them, and they're going to be in glow in the dark frame I made too. Little glow in the dark frame. Anyway, let me fix the focus there. So that's what I've been working on. It's been really kicking my ass big time. And I'll finish these today, these last 10, I think. Then I got to do the glow embellishments and varnish. I got to sign them, varnish, put them in the store. There's a lot to do. If you go to my Patreon, my Patreon subscribers get the first shot at getting any new work I have. So that's patreon.com/ChetZar. That's my personal Patreon. You could join for as little as $1 a month. And if you want to support this podcast, you can go to patreon.com/ I'm pretty tired. Patreon.com/darkartsociety, and you could also join there as little as $1 a month. If you join at the $5 level, you get a 20% discount code for Skull Shop, which is our sponsor, SKULLSHOPPE. I don't have my skull handy, but I do have a jawbone of one of their skulls. You know, I've said it a million times. Their skulls are amazing, and $5 level and above, you can get a 20% discount code. And what else? I got a deal with Art and Glow too. So they're kind of a sponsor, I guess. The company that I've been ordering my glow powders from. And what's the code? It's too late. I'll have to do it next. I'll put it in the description. But there's a link and you can get 10% off. I think it's ZAR is the code at artandglow.com. I'll put it in the description, the body description of the podcast. Is there any? Oh yeah, and if you join at the Dark Art Society podcast, you get your name read on the air. And this week we have DK Glass. Thank you, DK Glass. Appreciate you supporting the podcast. I think that's it. I think that's all. Yeah, that's it. Let's get into it. All right. Thanks for listening. And here you go. Mitch Horowitz, excellent guest and excellent interview. So here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening and watching. Oh, also, hit the like, subscribe, and notifications bell on YouTube if you can, because we're really trying to focus attention on the YouTube channel. All right. Thank you. Hello, Mitch.
My man, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I like my new headphones.
Invisible headphones.
Yeah, I feel really good about it. So.
Well, I did look up when I heard you were having mic troubles. I did look up Mercury retrograde, and it's supposed to start in a couple days. So they say a week before.
I'm trying not to be afraid of Mercury retrograde. In my experience, listen, there's all kinds of knots and fuck ups in life, and Mercury retrograde can also undo those things too. So irritating as it can be, I always want people to take a second look at it and realize that there are aspects of it that could be favorable.
Yeah, definitely. It's just like any painful experience you've gone through, particularly with like relationships and stuff. You end up looking back 5 years later and going like, oh, thank God that happened. Thank God I got out of that when you couldn't see it at the time. It's like, true. How often has that happened,
Right.
I'm having that experience now, actually, with someone that completely, I thought was one of my closest friends, totally betrayed me. And it's like painful, but I know it's good in the long run,
Now, this is what I want to do this show. Let's talk about betrayal.
I've got a lot of experience
in your usual theme. No, but it's fascinating. I mean, you'll forgive me for I don't mean to hijack the theme of the show. You're like, we were going to talk about Gnosticism. What is Horowitz talking about? Why is he talking about betrayal? No, but it's interesting. Like I've known people sort of in like the New York City real estate market who are like tough motherfuckers, like real badasses financially. And they're tough in ways that I would not want to be tough.
Mm-hmm.
They've elected to enter a world of commerce that has to do with a great deal of sharp elbows and sly working and all that jazz. I wouldn't want to be in their world.
Right.
Nonetheless, I recognize that these are, some badass people. And I've had some of these people, including one guy fairly recently, real estate financier, come to me and say he had a friend of his who had been his business partner in his firm for years and years and years. Everything was chill. Everything was fine. And then the teller of the story went through some personal difficulties, divorce and such. And the guy said, don't worry about it. I got your back. You deal with your divorce. You can count on me to be here for you to make sure that the farm is running. And long story short, he ripped him off. And he was shocked because he had known the guy for many, many years. And I thought to myself, okay, so if somebody of that, somebody who plays the hard game, the game I don't really play, but somebody who plays the hard game, if he can get blindsided like that by a longtime friend, colleague, business partner, what does that say about human nature? Can we trust fucking anybody?
Right.
Any of us, no matter who we are, vulnerable to that kind of situation.
Yeah, and there's no, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, there's no, I keep thinking like, what could I have done differently? Because this has happened to me a few times, like significantly. And of course you always go, well, maybe it's me. This keeps happening to me, but it's like, at the core of my involvement with these relationships where this has happened is me wanting to like try and help them, which makes it worse because I'm always trying to like, it's like I'm trying to like raise them up and and like join me on this journey because I have a little bit of pull in the art world or whatever,
Yeah.
Not a huge amount, but enough to where I can like offer that. And the people I care about, I want to come with me. You know what I mean? So, and
I
that
totally dig.
makes it so much worse. You know, it's like you end up feeling used and then you're like, what could I have done differently? It's like, but that's my
Always,
nature,
right?
you know, that's my nature to be that way. It's so I
The
can't,
answer may be nothing, you know.
yeah, just
Um,
that's the way it is. That's the way life is, you know, that's the risk you got to take.
well, I want to offer you three observations, if I may.
Sure.
One, I'm sure you and I are the same fucking person. I have this sneaking suspicion that the Matrix just got confused and divided our pixels, but same dude, you know. Because the same thing has happened to me. Like I had a good friend not long ago, a few years ago, and or at least I thought he was a good friend.
Right, right.
And he was handling we were how can I put it, we were collaborating on a very important business media venture, and he he did something without my consent that obligated me financially, and naturally I was unhappy about it. And you know, the next day I called him and I said, look dude, you know, you obligated me financially here, and I feel like this was simply wrong, flat out. And you know, I could hear him like take a deep sigh on the other end of the phone, and I thought to myself, well, you know, it was during COVID, right in the thick of it,
Hmm.
and people were under stress emotionally, financially. And so I said, look, I realize that you may be experiencing economic insecurity like the whole country is during COVID. So I'm gonna say we're chill, we're good. You know, I'm gonna do it your way. And he was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. Several months later, he ripped me off even worse.
Oh my God.
Um, and I didn't see it coming. You know, now somebody could say, well, you were a fool because, you know, fool me once, shame on me or whatever.
Right.
And sure, you know, I could always say that, but I thought, you know, I was doing the right thing by my friend. I thought he was just having a
Right.
meltdown and I was just going to give him a pass, you know. I guess the only thing I could say is this. Somebody once made a statement to me that I thought was a very interesting statement, although I don't agree with it politically. He said the difference between conservatives and liberals are, and he was speaking, I think, classically. I think these terms no longer hold up in the
Right.
21st century. So forget about the current political application, but maybe think about the classical application.
Hmm.
He said to me, the difference between conservatives and liberals basically are liberals believe people are good and conservatives believe people are bad. The liberals believe like if you have appropriate safeguards and I don't know, I guess a liberal might believe man is perfectible, to
Right.
put it using a rather portentous term. And a conservative believes that man is fallen and is basically bad.
Hmm.
And I don't think of those terms politically at all, but I do agree that man is basically bad,
Hmm.
which is why I have very few friendships and relationships. Those are the facts.
Yeah, I know, but it's like it's for me. It's just so it's like
Awful.
yeah, and it's like and it's like I trust people, and I have this innate feeling that people are good, even though it's like I have the
Right.
same kind of like view as you. I mean, you know, it's kind of expressed in my artwork a lot, I think, because you've got a lot of the I paint monsters, and these are really representations of people, I think, the humanity.
Yes.
and
Yes.
and they're and they are monstrous, but there's also like a an empathy with them, and a lot of them,
Yes. I agree.
they're not all terrifying and scary. Some of them, it's like, even though they're monsters, you still feel bad for them, you know.
That's your genius, if I may say, as an artist. You find pathos in monsters, and that's your fucking genius,
Oh,
Chet.
thanks. Thank you. That's I mean, that's what the paintings are all about, and that's how I feel about people too. It's like,
Yes.
you know, God, even if I remember when I was a kid, the few times I got in fights, which was really rare because I was pretty chicken kid about getting into fights. I was really shy and tried to avoid them at all costs. But the few times I fought back, I remember this one kid. I hit him really hard in the back. It was like he hit me in the back in class. And then after when we went to the bus, this was like third grade. But after I was so pissed. I was pissed the whole day, and I like confronted him, and and I don't even remember how I hit him, but I know I hurt him, and he started crying, and I just felt horrible. Like I felt so bad for that, even though it was like he had it coming because he hit me in the back, for no reason like that on my back when I was sitting in a chair, and it almost feels like a failing in a way to have. It's like and people say this all the time that they're empaths and that my biggest problem is I have too much empathy, which is so obnoxious when I hear it. But I kind of feel that way, and I feel like it's not good. I feel like it's it opens me up to way more potential pain and suffering, really, and I'm so often wrong about people that I've trusted.
Well, you wouldn't be an artist without it.
Yeah, that's true.
You wouldn't be able to find the beauty, the empathy, the emotions, the sensitivity within the monsters that you depict, which are the human race, essentially. I mean, you are the portraitist of humanity. It's just that we don't like to see ourselves that way. So you're a realist.
I'm a realist painter.
You're a realist painter. And you see, instead of but you're able to see through the fact that there is pain and there is heartache inside of these beings that you paint. I think every artist feels this way. Every artist suffers from excessive sensitivity and mood swings,
right.
Very, very deep polarities between enthusiasm and depression, or enthusiasm and anxiety, or something.
Right.
And I don't know that there's any way out of it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's like, even if it is bad to be that way, it's the way I am, and I can't change it. I don't think I could change it. It's just kind of, I feels like it's who I am. I've been like that since I was a little kid. I remember seeing, my friends would shoot birds with BB guns and stuff, and I just would cry when I saw them do that. I could not deal with it. It's like it was too much. I just had this sensitivity for things like that. And
I agree. I mean, I don't really. I've had the same experience where, maybe in a fight, I feel sorry for somebody.
Right.
Not really, I think, what Bruce Lee is looking for in the academy, and I think that these are, look, perhaps it's just the way of the world, some people. Sometimes we just get burned no matter what we do, and sometimes no matter how much of a fair deal we try to give somebody, when that person feels stressed or threatened in whatever way, he or she can always recite an
Nope, I lost you, Mitch.
Stealing from someone because someone once stole from him. It's a ridiculous fucking equation, but everybody justifies everything, and everybody's always the good guy. We're all the hero of our own story. And I fucking ask myself, because here I am singing this beautiful story about, the poor sensitive artists, we get fucked. Have I done that to other people? Because I would not want to fucking do that, but I know there are people out there in the world who think I've done that to them.
Right.
Probably some of the people I've just told these stories about.
Right. Yeah.
So I have to ask myself, how the fuck do I appear to another? And I hate to say this because I do believe there is some measure of objective experience, but maybe there's not. Maybe everything is so perceptually based that I can guarantee you, the friend, the so-called friend, the person I thought was a friend about whom I was just telling that story earlier, he thinks he's the good guy, and he can fucking understand that point of view. If he was your guest, he'd be like, "This is what fucking Mitch did," you know. So I don't know, you know, but I think it's really important to. I guess I'll look. I'll just put it this way: Gurdjieff, the G.I. Gurdjieff, the spiritual philosopher, you know, he always made the case that relationship was so central to life. We gotta fucking treat relationships with considerable care. They're all we have, and I happen to have very few of them because of the reasons that we've been discussing. But they matter, and one should behave as honorably as possible.
Yeah. Do you not have a ton of relationships? It's not is it a conscious decision for you, or is it like, because I don't have a ton of relationships either, except like a very few I could probably count on one hand, people that I'm close with, including my wife and you know, family, friends, maybe, but I never have felt like I wanted a lot of friends. It seems like a natural thing for me too, and I've always been comfortable being alone or, you know, by myself working. And my mother was like this too. She's like, she enjoyed being alone, you know. So I wonder how much of it. I guess I was going to ask you: is this isn't necessarily a conscious decision on your part, but also your nature, as far as not being a person that collects tons of friends?
It is definitely my nature, but as time passed, as I've aged, it's become conscious.
Right.
And I realize how little I miss the presence of other people, with very few exceptions. Obviously, I have a relationship with my children. I have a relationship with my partner. But, you know, when it comes to like hardcore, intimate, these things relatively little. You know, I mean, I certainly understand the pain of loneliness. I was very lonely as a kid, as a teen. Now I'm not lonely, but I will feel a little freaky if I spent the whole day in my apartment. Maybe Jacqueline, my partner, is away and my kids are not with me at the particular time. And I spend my whole day in my apartment and it's 7:00 at night. I get like a little fucking crazy and I start chatting up, you know, the guy over at the sushi restaurant on the corner, you know. But so I realize that loneliness can present a stress, and I really relate to that. But at the same time, human nature being what it is, what began as a natural proclivity morphed into a conscious decision as time passed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That's kind of my situation as well. So, okay. Not to get off track. Not that there really was a track anyway.
We're done with the betrayal, and
it's all good. This is what it's all about. I do want to mention that you know, I've been wanting to ask you to come on again since the last time, but I don't want to ask you. I don't want to waste your time, and I want to make sure it's worth something to you, and you know, there's a reason for you to do it, and I don't want to take your time for granted. So that's why I haven't asked you before this.
Oh no, I'm always down for it. Look, I have no friends. What do I do? Like, you know, I might be freaking out over here. Just invite me on. You know?
Okay. But it seemed like a good opportunity since we are doing an event together at the Philosophical Research Society, and you're doing a book signing and lecture 2 days after at the Philosophical Research Society. And I'm so appreciative that you agreed to do this. I'm really,
my pleasure, man.
Really looking forward to it. I mean, we still have to kind of figure out how it's going to go, but I think that we can. I'm not worried about it myself, but
no, I'm very down for it. I can't wait. I'm so excited to be able to sort of also see your work on the large screen. You know, I imagine you'll be projecting aspects of your paintings, your sculpture, and it's just so magical and wonderful. And I hope you'll also project images of some of the paintings and sculpture that you've done that maybe have been used in other forms of media, whether it be a movie poster or a band poster or of that nature. Because I think that I would love to, within this visual component of our presentation, see a kind of a retrospective of your career.
Yeah. That's basically, I have I've done this before. So I have like a what do you call it?
That like a, not PowerPoint, the word we all load.
Yes, it's like it's a presentation like that, like a slideshow
Yeah,
presentation. I do
I totally
have
do.
that, but it stops at a certain point because I haven't done it in a few years. So I need to update it and probably cut it down because it's really long. But I've
Mhm.
got like stuff from my film work. I've got a clip of me in Planet of the Apes, Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes, smoking a bong. I've me and Rick Baker, who I was working for at the time. He's a chimp. I'm an orangutan, and we're passing a hookah pipe around, and it just goes pans by us. So
That's wonderful. I can't wait.
it's pretty funny. So yeah, it'll be cool. And you're releasing your book the following Friday or Saturday? Is it
Friday.
Friday?
So the book comes out September 19th. Our talk together is September 20th. And then I guess my launch of modern occultism is Friday, September 22nd. So I'll be giving a lecture and signing and so on, and an exchange,
Cool.
with the attendees.
So can you tell me about your book? I'm so excited.
It's been the freakiest journey, and I'm so excited about it. And well, okay, the book is called Modern Occultism: History, Theory, and Practice, and it's a history of the occult as a thought movement, but also as a movement of practitioners, seekers, magicians, experimenters, from late antiquity up through the present. And for late antiquity, what I'm really focused on is the era immediately following the death of Cleopatra in Egypt, which is actually very, very important for the modern occult.
Wow.
Because most of our conceptions of occultism and most of the conceptions that got reprocessed through the Renaissance occult revival really come from I would say the decades immediately following the death of Cleopatra, which was not too off from the death of Christ either, because at that time, Egypt had by that point been dominated for hundreds of years by a Greek ruling class that was brought into Egypt by the invading armies of Alexander the Great. And we don't think of Alexander exactly as an invader of Egypt in this very unwanted way, because a lot of Egyptians really dug Alexander because they were being dominated by Persian powers who they really wanted to get rid of. And Alexander came in, this was around 332 BC, and he got rid of the Persian powers. And I think it'd be fair to say that to some extent, Alexander was Philo-Egyptian. He really dug the Egyptian culture, as did Cleopatra. Even though they were Greek, and even though they did, Alexander died very shortly thereafter, but even though his conquering generals and those leaders that replaced the pharaohs, which were known as Ptolemies up until Cleopatra, they created a ruling center in the city of Alexandria. And Cleopatra in particular did a lot to revive the mystery traditions in Egypt, which had been on the wane for some time. There was degradation that had set in. And in Cleopatra's wake in Alexandria, you had Greek Egyptian scribes who wrote down a lot of Egyptian esoteric philosophy in literature that we call the Hermetica today. And that record, imperfect, late in Egypt's life, but nonetheless, it was written in an expository language, Greek, that we Westerners can wrap our heads around. And then it got rediscovered, translated into Latin during the Renaissance. Again, early Romance languages that most of us have no traffic with, but still languages that are sufficiently expository so that they could be translated, right. They could be understood, they could be grasped to some degree by Westerners. So we think of our occult traditions as people are apt to think of all their religious traditions as being really old. But the truth is, most of them go to late antiquity just because that happened to be a period of time where, I don't know, I suppose you could say so-called West and East were meeting and stuff gotten written down in ways that Westerners, including modern Westerners, could at least begin to get their arms around. So hence I start there. And I worked my way up. I mean, we're talking Aleister Crowley, chaos magic, Grant Morrison, and I'm really proud of it because I worked really hard and I cast a very broad net. I worked so hard. I mean, I cannot tell you the number of days and nights unshaven in underwear, sitting in an apartment, pounding at keyboard. And I'm happy with it. I'm happy with it. And it's a long book, but not excruciatingly long. It's a detailed book, and it'll be in the eye of the reader whether it's excruciatingly detailed. I really wanted to give people the tools to understand the occult journey as a literary, intellectual, cultural, spiritual movement, which it is, and to explain, what is occultism exactly.
Right.
And it's not just everything and anything that's novel in the spiritual world or anything that's weird or unusual. It does mean something. It does refer to these Persian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman traditions that dominated a very large swath of the world, outside the orbit of India, China, and then maybe some of the like shamanic cultures in the South Pacific, South American basin. I mean, this was the outlook of the world, and there was a great deal of cross-pollination since Rome just felt like invading every place. And, for Rome, for all its brutality as a military power, was pretty open to different religious ideas, and sometimes Roman emperors would borrow them and adopt them quite freely, or local populations, as long as they paid their tribute to the empire, they were pretty left alone with respect to religious traditions. So Rome did not squelch religious traditions, but did a lot to spread them. I don't mean to paint a rosy picture like those were the good old days, because its military and taxation apparatus was brutal, but it was fairly hands off with respect to religion and even adopted religion. So this was part of the whole Western story, and it vanished with the advent of Christianity and then later with Islam. Well, I mean, it lingered, in all kinds of intriguing ways, but with the passage of centuries, the retentions became more and more hidden. So when we call a cult hidden, which is its proper etymology from Latin, we're not kidding.
Right.
And that also, and the Christian apparatus became so dominant in the West, along with Islam in other parts of the world, parts of the world that arguably could be considered Western, in that they were united for a period of time under the armies of Alexander. But, that's broadly speaking. But anyway, our tradition suffered a discontinuity, a schism. And so the story in the West, the occult story, is a very distinct one. Whereas our other parts of the human community didn't really have that schism. Like if you grew up in India, you're part of a religious tradition in Hinduism that really goes back to deepest antiquity.
Right.
Buddhism, insofar as it's an offshoot from Hinduism, likewise goes back to deepest antiquity. And in other nations, like China, might be said to be officially atheistic, and so it is. But there's Shinto, there's animism, there's ancestor worship, there's Taoism, there's Confucianism. I mean, these things are as old as the human story. The I Ching, as old as the human story. So it's just a different set of circumstances that we in the West have. Our religious story continued for millennia, and then got very sharply experienced a very, very sharp discontinuity. And those foundational faiths that existed before that discontinuity largely are what we have adapted, attempted to revive as occultism. So in that sense, occultism is really a revivalist thought movement. So I've really made an effort in this book to tell that story through what I think are some of its brightest lights. And it could not be a more exciting project for me. It's the culmination of, I think, damn near everything I've been working on for the past some odd years.
Yeah, it seems like it. It seems like the base layer of everything Everything's led up to this for you in a way. It's the history of everything you've been talking about all these years,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to think that. So what we, from an uneducated person like me, or casually educated, self-educated,
Independently educated.
Occultism is like, oh, it's always been this secret tradition that's always been beneath the mainstream. But what you're saying is that it's like this was mainstream. What is a cult now was mainstream. It was the norm for everyone back then.
Absolutely.
What a trip.
It's wild, and you think of all these households, countless numbers of people, they had their household gods, their local gods, or maybe they were dedicated to the sun god, Sol Invictus. Maybe they were dedicated to Jupiter, this history is messy. Like, we think of the Roman Emperor Constantine, supposedly converted to Christianity in 312 or 313 AD, and that is true. But Constantine also would combine Christianity with sun worship. It wasn't exactly like what we know today, to put it mildly.
Mm-hmm.
And on the steps of St. Peter's Basilica, well into the 5th century, pilgrims would turn to honor Jupiter, who sometimes was conflated with the sun. And bishops had to say, hey, no more ceremonies to Jupiter on the steps of St. Peter's. So not a particular problem at the Vatican today. So the ancient world did combine these things for a long, long time. It was a dramatic schism, but the schism developed across many, many, many generations.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, it made me think that the way I practice my own occult spirituality, it's like it feels natural and normal. It doesn't feel like a weird secret thing I'm doing. It feels like I always think, why isn't everybody doing that? Doing this? It just seems so normal, and it just feels natural. Like to, maybe it's as simple as every day in every way I'm getting better and better, and things like that, and just like as simple as setting your intention or stopping and going, this is the result I want, and sort of like knowing that just having that intention, there's some power behind that. And the more you can focus that, the more likely you are to achieve that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, because it's like, I every day I'm like, making a concerted effort, a few times a day, just when I think about it, like, oh, I need this paintings to sell so I can pay this bill. It's like, like thinking about it, knowing that, thinking that has power.
And it does have power. I've never been so persuaded that there's a causative dimension to our thoughts. Mm-hmm. I've also never been so persuaded that our thoughts are not the only game in town, that we experience all kinds of laws and forces. And that's why I have to, that's why I so assiduously avoid the term law of attraction or manifest, not because I'm averse to using popular language, not at all. Mm-hmm. But those usages very often suggest one mental super law. Right. And that's not my point of view.
That doesn't seem realistic when you think about the complexity of reality. Just,
so much.
Yeah.
We all agree, gravity is constant based on what we know, whatever the gravity may be, might I say, which seems to be mass attracted to itself. But based on everything we know, okay, so gravity reduces on another planet. Gravity is this way when you're on a roller coaster. Gravity is this way when you're, doing this. We know this. So even though that's an omnipresent law, we accept that it's going to be affected by surrounding circumstance. Why would a law of mind necessarily be different?
Yeah. I was, I'm always looking on YouTube, I guess, really, because I spent so much time at the easel, and I've got a TV here, so it's like I'll watch occultists or people talking about this sort of thing on YouTube, and I'd found someone, and I was like, oh, I dig what they're saying. This is kind of cool, and the more I was watching, the more it's like they have the accumulation of what they're saying is this is the one answer, and
Yeah.
it's like, this is it. And it's like, that just seems so naive in a way, to think that there's this one thing, this real, it to me, it's like, it makes sense what this person is presenting. It's like, okay, that makes sense to me kind of on an intuitive level, but it doesn't feel like that's the only answer to this, or the only dimension. Like it's so vast, and in a sense, it's it's kind of it's so human to try and put things in a small box that you can understand, and the truest adage ever, I think, is we don't know shit. We don't, and it's like, we can't know everything. It's like, the reality is so huge. It's beyond comprehension. That's the way it seems to me. That's what makes it God or whatever. That's what makes it amazing. That's what makes it infinity. It's beyond what we can comprehend in our minds. And I mean, this is not some great realization, but any kind of belief system that boils things down to, this is the one answer, to me, that automatically tells me they're missing something, or they're missing a lot. I don't know.
Yeah. And I have to, it seems to me that there's very little within the extra-physical experience that repeats precisely in the same way. And I was reading a very good book by a parapsychologist called The Trickster and the Paranormal. And he's just brilliant. And I'm afraid his name is escaping me. Let me see if I can look it up, because he's such a fine thinker. He really deserves to have his name spoken. So I'm going to, if I may, break through the
look it up. Let me take this opportunity
wall and go onto my my box here.
You look for it, and I'm going to say, that doesn't mean I don't believe that there are foundational principles of magic and reality. My point was that.
Oh, here we go. George P. Hansen. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. What was his name?
George P. Hansen, The Trickster and the Paranormal. And Hansen, who I've never met, is a parapsychologist for many, many decades. And he validates the basic data. But he also says, it's very, very difficult to replicate or map out this data in a way that is satisfying to us as Western rationalists, because there seems to be, by nature, an inconsistency to the data, and an inconsistency to even some of the subjects who, half the time seem able to perform, half the time seem unable to perform. And of course, a cynic or a pseudo-skeptic would look at that and say, well, that's because you guys don't have anything.
Right.
And if George were on this call, I think he would probably agree with me. No, we do have something, because we have stats as good as any. You could throw out our whole protocols for gathering stats, and that might be a worthy conversation. But as long as we have these protocols, we've played by the rules and we have scored. But it's very frustrating that it ain't, it's not electrical engineering.
Right.
It doesn't respond to the exact same set of circumstances in the exact same way, with the exact same people. And, I think Hansen felt at the conclusion of his book that there's ultimately and always going to be a uneven ambiguity to this problem.
Right.
And one of the things I really admire too about what Hansen does is he reviews the careers of some of the people who had dedicated their lives, such as the now deceased Martin Gardner, to debunking the paranormal, and I think he's very generous in reviewing their careers, more generous than I am, and I admire that about the man. But his attitude is, look, I've dedicated my life to this, and apropos of what you were just saying, he's like, even when you try to narrow your focus down to just an area that you would hope would be as simple and as basic as trying to test for a certain kind of result under certain kind of conditions, it doesn't, the data doesn't always cooperate, in the way that you would want. And we get to see this with special clarity in parapsychology because, in fact, there are a lot of people conducting experiments over and over, because what the skeptics cannot understand is that the field is filled with very dedicated people who really work incredibly hard, often without pay and on their own time, to replicate these experiments because they care, as opposed to, other experiments that perhaps we would benefit from rerunning, or we would be horrified by their rerunning, that might discover that some of our most popular pharmaceuticals, after all, don't work or show a declining effect. And this has been written about too. There was a very good article about this in Wired magazine some years ago. If we were to rerun all of our experiments in the social sciences and pertinent to certain psychopharmacological substances, as well as probably many other pharmaceuticals besides, like analgesics, as frequently as people have rerun the data in ESP research, we might be fucking mortified to find how little we really know, not just about spirituality, but about aspirin.
Right.
We know so little.
Yeah.
As much as we're able to do these miracles, we're using binary code to talk to one another in real time, and other people will watch this, and it's so incredible. It really, truly is.
Yeah.
And yet we know so little.
Yeah. It feels like to me on like a one of the principle hermetic principle of as above so below, and kind of like the polarities of reality, the two polarities. It seems like the knowable and the unknowable are always going to exist. Therefore, because there is the knowable, there will always be the unknowable. You know what I mean?
Wonderful point. And Aristotle would have to fucking agree with that, right? I mean, this whole thing is absolutes.
Right.
Presented an Aristotelian absolute that violates Aristotle in a certain sense, because it's everything is knowable, but you're as either real or fake, airsats or authentic, and you've just said, well, if the world is divided into absolutes, then you have to abide the opposite. There is the unknowable by nature.
Yeah, so, I it's funny because I came upon, I remember coming upon the realization that everything is divided into polarities when I was a young man. I remember all of a sudden kind of realizing that, and then putting everything into the two categories, the two polar opposites, and like, it seems like a step in the process of someone's spirituality, maybe. It seemed like a revelation to me at the time. It's like, oh man, you could put everything into one of these two categories, and it's
I went through the same phase. I got this tattoo. I don't know if you can see it. Can't hold it up. A is A. That. It's sort of a Aristotelian formula that was made by Ayn Rand. I can't show it very well. Sorry, but you'll have to trust me.
I can see it.
So no sooner do I get an idea that there's a tattoo, and I don't mind. It's like sometimes I'll move off from that, and people will say, well, now you got to walk around with it. And it's like, it doesn't bother me in the slightest, because it marks a point in my life. Right. It was valuable to me, even if I've moved on from it.
Yeah. That's a great attitude to have. So when writing this book, did you approach it? I don't know, how is it different than your other books? Did you kind of approach it the same way? I imagine that having all of that experience from all of the previous books you've written, when you get, the better you get at a skill like writing, painting, whatever, it's like every time you do it again, like the big one, if I do a show, you're better than you were the last time. You're able
Yeah.
to, do things more efficiently, and things are always changing because they're always growing. But was your approach similar? Did you, I wouldn't even know how to start approaching a project like this. Is it a bunch of reading of other occult history books? And I mean, I don't know. To me, it's like it kind of blows my mind how you would even do something like this.
Well, thank you. It began. There were two different aspects that converged. One was I taught this 12-part course for the Theosophical Society of America, which you were in, on modern occultism, and that was a 12-part course. I don't know precisely how the gestation of that came about, but I knew that when I was teaching it, I was going to hold myself to a very high standard and not permit myself to only deal with the familiar up to that point in my search, that I had to go much further and delve into the historicism of people and movements that I had not necessarily spent a great deal of time on, and I had to reverse that situation.
But you like that though, right?
I love it.
Yeah, that to me it seems like you.
Demanding.
Yeah, right. But that
I had to tell the story.
Yeah.
As I was working on that, probably somewhat concurrent with that, I was writing my book Daydream Believer, which was my best effort to come to a reckoning as much as I could with some of the mind metaphysics material that you and I were just discussing.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my chapters in that book was called the Parapsychology Revolution, and it was about just that. The efforts made to test for ESP, clairvoyance, precognition, telepathy. And I thought to myself, this chapter is going to have to be a unique effort on my part in terms of sourcing, because the skeptics and the pseudo skeptics always have knives out. And if I'm going to address this material, I have to build this chapter as solidly as you would build a suspension bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything has to be right. And so I made that effort. And that effort informed the effort that I brought into modern occultism. And then I had the lectures transcribed into a regular prose. But that is really just an exercise in creating an outline, because
right.
Spoken word and written word are dramatically different. Mm-hmm. And there's a terrible incompletion to most contemporary spoken word. Maybe this wasn't true in antiquity, but it's certainly true today. There's an incompletion in most spoken word that does not abide translation to the written page. Mm-hmm. So I used it as an outline, but I reworked it tremendously. And I made such an effort at every stage to bring the fullest possible reckoning I could to all the key figures involved. I'm certain that I've left people out, but my hope is that thematically I covered everything thematically. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't know I could do it. Certain chapters went well, and I thought, gee, I'm doing great. And then other chapters were very, very hard. And then when I finished the whole thing, I found tremendous gaps and incompletion. And I had to really go back and reckon with things that I maybe had been saying or writing or thinking for years and years that were incomplete or that just didn't fully stand up. So that's how I got there.
Yeah, it seems you love what you do, obviously. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. So I imagine when an opportunity like this comes around, you relish the idea of just digging in and doing all the research. I mean, I know when I of course I always relate everything to painting and my artwork because that's all I got. But when I have, like, say, a theme, if I want to paint, if I'm doing a show that's based on a theme, I really enjoy the idea that I have to learn all this new stuff. I did a show on Lilith themed show, and it was so much fun to really get into the and learn. Get in it, because I love reading and I love learning, and so I imagine, this must have sounded, whether it was fun or not, it must have seemed like it was going to be super fun when you had the idea to do it.
Well, it was fun. It was ball busting.
Yeah, yeah, but that's how the really satisfying stuff is. It's fun, but it's also painful and difficult at times.
It has to be,
It has
right?
to be, yeah.
I remember there's a small section of the book where I'm writing about Enoch, the figure of Enoch in the apocryphal tradition, the Old Testament tradition, the Gnostic tradition, because people are just fascinated with this figure of Enoch, who's very enigmatic, makes a brief appearance in Genesis, ancestor to Noah. One of the kind of last of that Edenic line before Scripture goes off elsewhere, and of course he has a big presence in the apocryphal literature. Just to drive the human race fucking crazy. There's more than one patriarch named Enoch, so that we all can beat our heads against the wall, kind of like Roman emperors taking the same name, just to break the walls. How many Herods do there need to be in the ancient world? Plenty apparently. So you have these different Enochs, and anyway, sorting that all out was tough. And I sorted it out with as much clarity as possible, because I also realized that many historians are so familiar with this material that they don't realize how unfamiliar the reader is, and they don't take the time to abide definitions or to explain why do we number the Hermetica? I beg your pardon. Why do we number the Corpus Hermeticum 1 to 18? And where the fuck is number 15? It's missing. And what is it? And why is it missing? And when did it come and go? And these things can be explained, but it does take tremendous effort. And historians rarely put in that effort, because to them it's all inside baseball. Like, they know the answer.
Right.
Don't pay attention to the fact that, like, my neighbor Mike doesn't know the answer and Mike wants to know. So I had to really double back quite a bit and make sure I was explaining things, because I find, even having read for years in these areas, there are things that are neglected, and they're neglected because people are writing with a guild mentality, and they're not thinking of the end reader who doesn't know this, why this would be the case. And I think, and I don't know, because the literature doesn't make it clear. And sometimes you have to go back in and, on occasion, throw away the literature and just do your own primary research, which I've done plenty of myself. And that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where the rubber hits the road. Getting into how the Hebrews use the term Satan and what they meant by it.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't write that stuff down. And the original Hebraic concepts of Satan had a very big effect on Western culture, even though it changed a great deal, and much more ambiguous when the Hebrews used it, much more ambiguous than, say, 1,000 years later, still ancient, when the church fathers were like, he's the bad guy. And it's like the Hebrews were like, no, we're not so sure. And, it's very interesting, and sometimes you got to throw out the books and you got to go back to the texts. And I made that effort.
Did you were you studying the magical systems as much as you were studying the history of the magical systems? You know what I mean? Because it's like you can read books about people that know about the magical systems and the history of these different systems, and then there's the books themselves. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yes.
How much did you?
I did both.
Yeah.
I must admit, ceremonial magic is tough for me. It's not in maybe it has something to do with my childhood. I grew up in a childhood that was very, very heavy on religious liturgy, ceremony. And I moved away from it in my early 30s. And when I encountered ceremonial magic, John D. Crowley, I honor it, but it's not my path.
Right.
But I did do my best to go back into the guts of those systems so that I could demonstrate also how incredibly hard, how incredibly hard the classical magician worked. Like I try to go through some of what John Dee and his collaborator Edward Kelly did. There's a cult scholar, I don't personally know him, but I admire his work, Stephen Skinner, who recreated some of the D. Kelly rituals.
Mm-hmm.
And the level of effort that these people put in, it's just not like what we know in modernity.
Right.
So I try to recreate some of that just to give people a sense of how hard this really was for people, how dedicated they really were.
So it sounds like you, I mean, again, we have, I think, a similar perspective on magic, like I know some people really get into the ceremonial ritual, just buy the book, follow the rules, and you'll get the result. And I also am kind of like, I don't know, it makes me feel lazy, but it's not, it's more like, it's not laziness as much as I feel like you should be going towards the thing that grabs you and is like, this is what you should be doing. I've done plenty of the rituals and kind of the ceremonial work. I'm not like some great magician by any stretch of the imagination. It's like, I'm always, what do I need to get out of this? Practical. I'm very practical with it. And it's like, I'll kind of do that. But to me, and I just talked about this. Last episode was talking with a friend of mine who's an amazing artist named Ryan Peterson, who we talked about The Exorcist, and just because of Friedkin dying recently, and it was a really cool episode. But this came up for some reason, the idea that the thing that I'm called to in that way is the altar of the easel. That's the thing where it's like, and it made me realize that's really my magic system, is my artwork. And if I'm going to tailor things maybe to get a certain results, I probably should do it more through the artwork somehow. I did kind of design a ritual to where I made a sigil and put it on a canvas and painted the sigil out when I painted the painting. So, and the idea being that all the effort I was putting towards making the painting was obliterating the sigil. And so I had the idea in my mind that the intention, because the concentration's so great when you're painting, just like it is with writing, that it's like, okay, all that concentration is going to manifest this thing. And it worked, it definitely worked. I got the result I was looking for, which was a very like grounded, practical thing I needed to have happen. And so, I mean, I feel like you should always go towards your spiritual path is the thing that grabs you and won't let go.
Yes. And I dig that.
And if you're into like spirituality and magic, you find a way. This is where I think the idea of chaos magic is really useful, to where you can kind of like design things to suit you personally, and find the thing that grabs you and incorporate that into your practice somehow, or make that your practice in a way. You know what I mean?
I totally resonate with that. And for some people, I reckon that's hard,
Yeah.
Maybe that's what results in like hitting drugs too much, or hitting the bottle too much, or whatever, because we're looking for that ecstatic experience. It's very hard to find. And so pissing away time, just binge watching stuff, or hitting weed like constantly. I think probably that can happen. And for me, I mean, I can't tell you how fortunate I feel to be able to dedicate my time to writing. I mean, I am so infinitely happier than I was back when I was in my publishing days, when I was spending a great deal of my time just getting other people to do their shit,
right,
rather than my own shit. And the happiness factor, it could not be greater.
Yeah.
Could not be greater.
Yeah, I'm with you. As much as I suffer, there's a lot of suffering involved in my life, just because of, it's hard to be an artist, to make a living and be self-employed. with all the suffering, it's still the best, I would never go back. I would never go back unless I absolutely had to. I'd never go back to the 40-hour week job. I'd rather work 80 hours a week doing my thing,
Without question. And of course, there's painfulness. You get misunderstood, but you get misunderstood in life no matter what.
Yeah, right.
Misunderstand us all the time. So
I don't, wasn't it? It didn't. I've said this before on the podcast, and it's like I heard someone say it once, and I haven't been able to find the actual source material, but I think it was Crowley said that the artists are better than the greatest magicians.
Oh, I've never come across that.
I think it was maybe Jason Louv said that at one point.
Okay.
And of course, it's a bit of hyperbole, but that it got me thinking also about like the creative act is a magical act. It's the same thing.
Without question. I mean, to me, you are a wizard because I'm looking at your workshop as much as I'm capable of seeing it on a Zoom camera. And, it looks like a smelting factory. Yet I'm also looking at some of the paintings that you've done that are over your shoulder. And there's this pristine, beautiful quality to them. And, here you're sort of in the belly of a freighter ship, with all the...
That's what it feels like.
And the coal and the, smudges and everything. And yet, the creation that emerges from that is this sleek, smooth, beautiful creation. And the end user, your audience member, he or she loves it, but doesn't know that, like, oh my God, the wizard is sitting inside of this grotto that's filled with fumes and smoke and smudge and oils. And, hopefully, you've got a good ventilation system, all this jazz. But the outcome is so sleek and smooth and beautiful, and there is magic to it. There's also magic on a movie set. I've seen the same thing. I mean, I watched Jacqueline shoot her movie My Animal, and the effort that they have to go through just to get that one shot.
Yeah,
and also one of the lead actor on the film, Bobby Salvor Menuez. Bobby is a fucking brilliant actor, and their performance in the film is incredible. And I remember having this wonderful occasion where I was on set. This was in northern Ontario in a town called Timmins, which is 400 miles south of the Arctic Circle, fucking cold as hell, in the middle of January. And they're in a hockey arena, and Bobby is making facial expressions to respond euphorically to a figure skater that they're watching. There's no figure skater there. There's no figure skater there. The camera is just on Bobby's face, and Bobby's making these expressions. And these expressions, as you will see when you see the film, are 100% persuasive. 100% persuasive. And there is magic in this.
Yeah.
The actor is looking at nothing, and yet without much in the way of rehearsal, with it being goddamn freezing and it's 4:00 in the morning, cameras on, and they deliver their performance, and it's magic.
Yeah. How is that different from calling upon a spirit or a god and asking them to embody, or what do you call it? There's is it invocation or evocation? There's one of those is where you call the spirit into your body to really kind of help you if if you need to help speaking. There's a god that's good.
Beautifully put. Right. What else is inspiration?
Right.
Precisely what it is.
But it's like,
and that's what the Romans believed. They referred to. I mean, in Arabic they use the term genie. It comes from the Latin. The plural is genii. Genie or genii inhabits the individual to give him or her abilities at a given. That's how they saw it. They were probably correct.
Yeah, and that's like again, this came up also on the podcast last week. Is this idea that there's these different like there's the art god, and then there's the there's these sub gods. There's the still life art god, there's the monster art god, there's these different, or spirits or whatever. And it's like, in order to create like a really amazing still life painting or a really amazing piece of dark art or a really amazing landscape. You have to allow yourself to be possessed by the spirit of that thing, that genre that you're painting in. Where like your work is like the occult historian god, which there is one. I don't know what it would be, but it's like there are spirits to all of these things. Like every book you read, every genre, every different kind of genre of writing and art and creativity and music. It's like there's the punk rock god. It's like you know it when you hear it, and it hits certain notes, and the only way to create it in a truly inspired way is to let that thing come in.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, we don't even, I mean, I've never thought of it that way, up until, I don't know, recently, but it's like, I've been doing it all my life. That's what you do when you allow yourself to be taken over by an idea and dedicate yourself to expressing it in the best way you can possible. You're giving yourself over to this spirit.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And it's, to me, it's like, the ceremonial magic is written for the average person that doesn't already have that kind of connection that I think creative people have naturally. And I don't want to sound elitist, but because that's not what I mean. You know, I believe that everybody really does have access, but I think that or access to these things. But you know, it's just like anything. People have more natural acuity for certain things, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely grok that some people function well with congregational spirituality, you know, speaking in terms of the mainstream. I mean, I've seen people get ecstatic in Baptist services. I've seen Hasidic Jews display tremendous emotion, you know, during their liturgy. So I definitely grok to that. And if I met somebody who grokked to ceremonial magic in a way that's summoned in him or her those emotions, I'd be like, more power to you, you know, be my guest.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. I definitely prefer the solitary path. And I'm open. I'm open to the congregational path insofar as if I find people I trust, I'll do it with them. Like every fifth person I meet asks me, have you taken ayahuasca? Have you taken ayahuasca? I have not taken ayahuasca only because I have not found a community
right.
with which to take it that I trust.
Right.
And it sort of goes back to what we were discussing at the beginning of our exchange. Be really, really careful who you hand your trust to. I've certainly, in spiritual situations, handed my trust to people who didn't warrant it. And I would not do that again.
Yeah.
I hope, unless it was just by sheer accident.
Yeah.
I think we all have to be really careful of the theatricality of the spiritual world. And when you're meeting a guru or a minister or a therapist, for that matter, or whoever it is, there's a power dynamic there, and there's a theatricality there where that person is set up in the scenario as the man with the plan.
Right.
And I know how that feels because I've had some people look to me as like the man with the plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm not the man with the plan. I'm a seeker.
Right.
And if we can exchange fruitfully, great. But people will quickly take advantage of that, even against their own self-assessment. I've seen people in spiritual situations be given a piece of authority and suddenly they're dictatorial and their judgment is very poor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they don't deserve the authority because they just, their judgment isn't equal to it. And
yeah,
it ain't easy when you're in the woods and you're on a weekend trip and the so-called group leader is somebody whose judgment isn't equal to his authority. You got to figure out, well, now what the fuck do I do?
Right.
Hike out of here and take a Greyhound home? Do I, you know, have an open revolt? You know, and those are questions that an individual may have to face by him or herself. But I do think it's very important to be very careful about handing over trust.
Yeah. I guess the point I was getting at with the ceremonial magic tradition is that I I've heard that chaos magic and is more suited to artists and creative type people, and I feel like ceremonial magic is just for everybody, not necessarily creative people. So it's very rote, a very by rote and like rigid and structured, because anybody can do that. Anybody can do that and get the results. And so I don't, I hate to say it because I feel like it makes me sound kind of, I don't know, kind of an asshole or something. But I feel like I feel like I don't need that.
Right. I totally agree to what you're saying.
I use it and I use things from it for sure, but I don't feel like I have to do the whole thing and just totally follow the structure, because it's like it's kind of, I have it sort of naturally it's ever since I've been a kid, it's kind of naturally been there, and my mom kind of taught me, and it's a little more like, I don't know. Yeah, I don't. Go ahead. What you were going to say?
No, it's interesting. I mean, I tried in the book to see it from both sides. Like, I would get very frustrated with the Golden Dawn tradition, for example, because it's so stratified and it's so steeped in ceremony. And some of it, frankly, seems sui generis, just something that's drummed up by these guys, almost independent of their own preferences at a certain point.
Right. Yeah, it's super Christian, too. It's like very Christian-y.
Very. Can we come back to that in a second?
Yeah.
Please hold that thought. But I quote from an occult scholar who I respect very deeply. I don't know him personally, named Donald Tyson. And Tyson apparently is much more sympathetic, perhaps, than I am to the Golden Dawn tradition. And he defended S. L. McGregor Mathers and some in particular, and said, he felt that Mathers was psychically led, and that the secret chiefs are perhaps incorporeal intelligences with whom Mathers was in touch. And I quote him because I feel like that point of view deserves to be represented. It's not my point of view, but Tyson is a great intellect in my estimation. Again, I don't know him. I'm speaking just from his work, which I admire. He did some yeoman's work translating some early tarot writings that were very important, and from French to English. And I felt like I need to give credit, to that perspective as well. But what you just said is so important, that it's very Christian, and that has colored the New Age tremendously.
Right.
The New Age is very Christian, even though the New Age is in many respects ecumenical and is very comfortable with Buddhism and Hinduism and interpretations of the UFO thesis as spiritual in nature, which I'm fine with. And I'm happy for people to explore that. There is a light versus dark, good versus evil quality to it that is not exactly Gnostic, because what I've described could be seen as the Gnostic quest, but the Gnostic quest finds its solution in transcendence, we'll say, whereas the Christian quest finds its solution, to some degree in transcendence, but Christendom as practice has always had its eye on how to structure the outer world. I don't think you could run a village on Gnosticism, but you could damn well run a village, for good or bad, with practicing Christianity.
Right.
And so the New Age does tend towards a Christian stratification. Under Gnosticism, I suspect, especially contemporary interpretations of it, it's much easier to just leave people alone and to go about on your search and hope that you will break through the matrix or take the right color pill, whichever. I always forget whichever one it's supposed to be, blue or red. Which is the good one? I don't know. I mix them up. But take that and see something, glean something that's outside the matrix or the meat sack world that we live in, as Miguel Connor puts it. But with Christianity as practiced, Historically, it has been much, and maybe because there was no discontinuity, as the word for Gnosticism, there are arrangements to be made in outer life that are more pronounced than what you find within contemporary iterations of Gnosticism, and those arrangements color New Age culture and color occult culture. And I've had people who have kicked me out of organizations or canceled talks or write me a pissy letter or something, because they're operating from that Abrahamic Christian outlook that says we have got to organize life in such a way that there's a higher and lower here too, not just in the world we can see, but in the world that we see.
Right.
And those who speak for what they perceive as the lower, all artifice, has to be dealt with in the world. And there is a quality of Christendom that hovers over the New Age and the occult culture, and that you very rightly identified within the Golden Dawn tradition too. I do not like, and I write about this in the book, I don't like the divisions that the Golden Dawn made between white and black magic. I don't believe in those divisions. I don't think, not only do they not suit our era at this time, but I just don't believe in those stratifications.
Yeah,
yeah,
and it feels like, that's a good point. It feels like it's incompatible with modern times, because it seems like all around us, one thing that's happening is a breakdown of traditional hierarchical structures, and really a breakdown of polarity type thinking, and look at with the whole idea of different new genders and people not identifying. Right. It's like and even if you look at like politics, it's like there's it's not left or right anymore. It's like everything is mixed up, and people that used to be left are totally far right now somehow, but they still have some left. It's just like it's all falling. It's like disintegrating. But I think that's like it's I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's just kind of the way things are happening now. It's like the new reality is not it's not as structured, it's not as hierarchical in a way, and it seems like the old structures that traditionally would run things are based on that old kind of super hierarchical structure, and I don't know, it feels like it's breaking down to me, on a social level at least,
It's definitely breaking down, and we don't know what's going to replace it. There's simply no telling. I mean,
that's the fun part.
It struck me that, like this week, the Republicans are having their first primary debate Wednesday night. I don't know when the episode is coming out. Forgive me for time stamping our episode.
It's going to come out Wednesday. It's going to come out tonight. It's
otherwise people are like, what is Horowitz talking about? We now live under the scrolls. What does he mean? but so the Republicans are having their debate, and Trump is skipping it, and people are saying, he's afraid, he's this, he's that. I have no idea what he thinks since he's stopped returning my emails. But I think, what he's doing, it seems to me, is he's showing that he's bigger than the Republican Party.
Right.
And he may succeed with that. He may fucking succeed with that. He may be like, look, you guys, I got the nomination. I didn't need to rely on your bullshit, and then we'll see what happens in the general. But that's just one example of how this stuff is breaking down. Like that would have been unthinkable 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so we don't know what's replacing this. And the breakdown between cultural politics and economic politics, I believe, is felt, and we don't know quite where that's going. And it's very, very hard to speak. We can still speak in terms of left wing, right wing, and everybody has a general conception of what we're all talking about together. But ours is the last generation, I believe, for which that's true. I think probably for the next 30 years or so, that language will be reasonably consensual, but we may be entering the very last phase of modernity where that language is consensual, because it's breaking down right now, and I see no reason why that would stop. I mean, Newton tells us motion continues unless something stops it. Well, what's going to stop it?
Right.
French Revolution is done. We're not going back to that precisely. There's going to be something else, I presume. but trends usually continue unless there's a reason why they stop. And so if we're seeing that breakdown, I'd presume we're going to continue to see it.
Yeah. It's, like you said, we don't know what's going to replace it, which is scary as hell, but it's also exciting, and the potential could be for something good to replace it. I mean, it's like, it's totally, anything could happen. That's how I feel. It's like anything could happen. That's one thing that you could say about the Trump era, is that everything's out the window. There's nothing you can count on anymore for stability. Yeah. It's like anything could happen. He could, people are saying there's no way he's going to jail because rich white guys don't go to jail. And it's like, he became president. How unlikely and insane was the fact that he won? He could go to prison. That could happen too. And that's just as insane. It's like, you can't.
Eugene V. Debs ran for office from prison. And what if he wins from prison?
Right,
I have no idea.
Yeah. It's like anything.
Is this written down somewhere? It might be.
Anything could happen at this point. And it's just like, it's such a weird.
It's weird. I mean, at this point in my life, and not everyone is going to feel this way, and not everyone is going to resonate with this. I want politics to be boring.
Right. Yeah.
One of my kids was talking with my partner, Jacqueline, about politics and, this, that, the other thing. And my attitude is I want some gray, beneficent policy wonk. I want Michael Dukakis, I want politics to be boring.
Yeah. Make politics boring again.
Exactly. I think when political movements are on the march, bad things usually happen because human nature is bad.
Right.
and I'm not trying to be glib. I mean, I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, I'm not trying to be glib. I'm really, there is political thought that I'm really interested in, and I'm really sympathetic towards. I'm interested in the political thought of Francis Fukuyama, the guy who came up with the whole end of history thing, which has been misunderstood and misrepresented, including by people who are smart enough to really know better. And I want there to be as equitable a society as we can attain. I don't have health insurance. I am goddamn sympathetic to everybody who's in that boat, and I want to fix it. So it's not as if I want things to be static or stand still. But I also don't trust political movements that are on the march. And there are very, very few political movements on the march. There are some that have happy endings.
Right.
And I want to be really careful about that. Not that anybody cares what I think. I mean, I'm just one guy. Things are part of huge seismic motions that none of us can control.
Yeah. It feels like, it doesn't even matter what you think or what I think. It's just, it's going to happen.
Doesn't matter.
It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. It's this huge thing. And I in a lot of ways, I feel like we're, our main job is to just bear witness. You participate however you can. But really it seems like it's just about, bearing witness. There's something about bearing witness that seems important for some reason. I don't know why really, but it seems like that's, I don't know. I feel like our generation maybe is kind of like, or at least the people that are alive now, it's like, this is your job to bear witness to whatever's happening, at least that's part of our job.
Gurdjieff would call it attention. I think he meant the same thing, although attention can be understood in many, many different ways. But he wrote and spoke about how wars and cataclysms, just like earthquakes and tidal waves, are the result of these cosmic forces over which humanity has no knowledge, no control. There are cosmic forces constantly wielding their influences on the planet. We can call it whatever we want: high tide, low tide, earthquake.
Right.
It happens beyond our control, and we can witness it. We can be attentive to it. If we're not, we are in a degraded state that isn't worthy of the name human. So I'm with you. I mean, I presume I will vote. I presume I will do all the things that a person does to get through life. But ultimately, we're kidding ourselves, perhaps, if we don't acknowledge, like you were saying, that we're just witnessing.
Yeah, yeah. Did you hear that there was an earthquake here yesterday during the tropical storm?
No, I missed that.
Yeah. We had this crazy tropical storm come in, and it was raining like crazy,
And an earthquake.
and an earthquake on top of it.
Great.
And it's like,
Great.
I was listening to someone on talk about it on the news, saying that it's a common misconception that weather affects earthquakes. It's like they're two totally different things.
Mm-hmm.
But what are the chances that is just, to me, it's cosmic. It's like,
yeah.
It's like all of this stuff feels very cosmic to me. The turmoil in the climate turmoil and the political turmoil and the online discourse of people arguing and fighting all the time. It just seems like, I don't want to say it's all happening for a reason, but it all feels related. It feels like it's the same thing. It's like everything is happening in that way, in a weird way.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I agree.
It's like all you can really do is try and surf the wave, keep your head down, and don't get caught in the crossfire in a way, and try and navigate it, which I think is it's chaos magic type thinking is helpful for that world. I feel like chaos magic, or what you the way you call it, what archaic? What was your?
I use the term anarchic magic.
Anarchic, anarchic magic. It's like, that's perfect, and it feels like that's the most suitable system for a world that's changing so much and so chaotic that you can't get a grasp on anything. The only answer would be some kind of system that changes with it on the fly. You can change it yourself. You can customize it, modify it. You know what I mean?
I do, and that's become my approach. It's simply become my approach. I've worked hard, studied hard, learned about a lot of different systems, and my wish is for accelerance. My wish is for things to be simple. That's one area where I got to hand it to the Christians and the Abrahamic world. Their notion of having a direct relationship with a monotheistic creator was very, very powerful to people in antiquity who maybe were fed up with temple systems that over the many, many years had gotten corrupt, and they were perhaps thinking to themselves, enough with the tributes, enough with the tithing, enough with the taxation.
Right.
And it would be naive and partisan in a very shallow, foolish way to say, oh, well, the big bad Christians just came and ruined everything that was wonderful in the ancient world. There are no good guys and bad guys.
Yep.
Paganism had undergone a great deal of corruption and problems, and there was a feeling, I think, when the individual encountered the monotheistic direct relationship schema, of relief. Like, wow, you mean I don't have to, do this, and that, and if you're a Jew, I don't even have to eat kosher food. It must have sounded very, very, very liberating. And although that is not my search does involve a lot of simplicity. I really want to break things down to their most simple. That's part of why ESP research, parapsychology research is so important to me, because if we can warrant through testimony, through models, through theory, and through hardcore data that there is an extra-physical aspect to thought, to psyche, which I cannot turn away from the evidence for that, then that warranted information, that warranted certainty, confirmation that there is this extra-physical aspect might make it easier for the individual to access that. And if that's being the case, and we find this in placebo studies, for example, hopeful expectancy, that's the trigger again and again and again. And William James brilliantly made the observation in the late 19th century that he saw no reason why making an appeal to the divine, the creator, the higher God, whatever a person might call it, did not also in that framework increase the effects felt from the source to which that appeal is made. There's no reason why the appeal would not increase the experiences of that source. And so if I'm appealing to myself, to other people, to place warranted belief in the extra physicality of mind, that in itself may ease the way for us to find a path to the mind causation that we were talking about, which eases back maybe some of the liturgy and ritual. So I'm about simplicity at this point in my search.
Yeah, that's one of the things I love that I hearing you say, and really kind of like a super profound idea to me was the clarified wish concept.
Yeah.
Because we're taught from childhood that, wishes are for fools. It's like wishes are bullshit. And so, but that really is at the core, I think, of this manifestation or law of attraction, or whatever it's, if you could, it seems like, have you tested this? It seems like if you clearly, strongly, that's what focusing attention is. That's what a wish is clear, strong, focused attention on an objective.
Yes.
And so, but it's the most direct, simplest way of doing it. They say chaos magic clears away all the artifice of ceremonial magic, but a clarified wish, I think, goes below that even.
I agree completely. One of the things I explore in Daydream Believer, it comes early in the book. In a way, it could have been the ultimate chapter, but I didn't want to hide possibilities from people. So I think it's chapter 2 is just exactly what you're saying. Maybe the wish itself is enough. If clarified, if felt with absolute passion,
right,
maybe that's enough. No second thoughts about it. We all know what we want.
Yeah.
When we feel hungry for food or we feel a sexual appetite or whatever, we're not thinking like, well, maybe there's unintended consequence. We know what we want. There may be things that interrupt that, but if one can come to a wish like that without any
fighting against it,
right, could be very powerful. It has been for me.
Yeah. So you've seen this work in your own life.
Well, certainly over the arc of wishing to be a writer.
Mm-hmm.
I remember somewhere I tell a story about climbing to the top of this tower, this Victorian tower on the banks of the Charles River, and I knew I wanted to be a writer. I knew it with everything in my guts, and that was effective. That was effective.
Yeah. I did it when I was a kid. That's how I used to see myself as a painter in a, dressed like the classical with a smock and holding a palette. Like in the first grade, I remember thinking that.
Yeah.
It was like, and it's like you're fantasizing about it, and that is putting that's focused attention. Fantasizing is focused attention.
Beautifully put. Fantasizing is focused attention. Absolutely. And it worked. Look, you're seated in your studio. We're doing this thing.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It worked. One time I had the uncanny realization that speaking this way over Zoom was a replication of what I used to do when I was a kid.
Yeah, right.
I would look in the mirror and I would practice speaking. And this is really very close to that physically.
Yeah. The thing that I know we're getting near the end, so I'm not gonna keep you on much longer, but I wanted to say 2 more things. One thing was, the weird thing is that some things happen so easily, and then, and some things like unintentionally happen that you're thinking about. Like I had this experience when I was first discovering psychedelics, going through all this stuff, having this major spiritual breakthrough when I was 19 or 18 or something. And a friend, we were doing this, someday we'll talk about all this stuff, but I was doing this Ouija board with my 2 friends, or one became my wife, one's one of my closest friends. And we were in contact with the spirit through the Ouija board. And it was like it was my big thing. I was at a punk band at the time. My friend was telling me about this song, called Bony Fingers. Did I tell you this story before?
No.
It was a country song, and the tradition of punk bands to do fast versions of country songs, like Take This Job, Dead Kennedys, and Rawhide, and Be Las Vegas and stuff. So he's like, you got to do Bony Fingers as a punk song, because I was in this punk band. And I was like, Bony Fingers just can't be real. He would like joke, it was like a running joke, because back then there was no internet. This was in the 80s, late 80s. And it was a running joke that, you're making it up, or that's not really a song. And he's like, it's great. It's this great country song. And it is a great, he ended up finding it on cassette. We did it. It was totally a great song, written by Hoyt Axton. The main chorus is work your fingers to the bone. What do you get? Bony fingers. It's great. So anyway, I'm working on my first big movie, The Blob, the remake of The Blob.
Oh shit.
Yeah. And I was like, just brand new in the industry. This is all going on while all this stuff was happening. And my boss is like, hey, this actor's coming in, Hoyt Axton, and you're going to do his life cast, and you're going to do this effect on him. And he came in, and it was me, out of all the people in the shop, he randomly chose me to do his life cast and do the effect. Yeah. Which was, what are the chances? And I was able to actually go, I do a cover of Bony Fingers, and it's like that manifested like effortlessly, and other things seem to take more effort. And it's like, that was so random and kind of unimportant in a way, other than to let me know that this stuff is real. It's the only thing that really came out of it. But it's like, I don't understand. That's, I guess, maybe that's not meant to be understood, but why is something, how it is. Sometimes you'll it's seemingly manifest something effortlessly. And other times you get it, but it takes more effort. You know what I mean?
I totally know what you mean. And apropos of that, if I may, I want to share 2 practical exercises with you that you and me and your listeners can attempt, if they feel like it, to cut through everything, in the same way that chaos cuts through all the edifice that we might want to get rid of, all the detritus we might want to get rid of. And in the same way that the wish goes even deeper in terms of cutting through stuff, you don't even need the sigil, perhaps.
Right.
I want you suggest 2 exercises to try. Very brief, very simple. So simple that they're easy to overlook, which is usually the exercises that we don't do because we think I get it.
So easy.
But so fucking easy. How can you resist it when you hear them? Okay, there's an actor who told me that a famous actor friend of his said to him once that his success rested on this principle. Determine the things that make you lucky. Determine the things that make you lucky, and then do more of them. And one could say, well, gee, that seems sort of amorphous, or that even seems superstitious. Just forget all the prejudices. Throw out the prejudices. There are certain things, ways perhaps the individual dresses, places the individual goes, people the individual hangs out with, the kinds of work that you do, the kinds of receptions that you get. You just think about those areas in life where you've felt seen, understood, appreciated.
What a great idea.
What was going down at those times?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I don't care whether you want to use the word luck or not. Let's just call it that for the time being, and just make a study of that. And then the other thing was, that's one exercise. Other exercise, and I'll be doing this, right on real time with everybody. I've been happy lately. Things have been going well, and I've been asking myself why. And then I have noticed that I have been saying no to things freely that I really, really, really don't want to do. And that has been revolutionary for me. And I really want to make an effort at that, because it's very easy to say yes out of inertia, and we do it all the time. Yeah. It doesn't mean being selfish. It doesn't mean being a dick. There is reciprocity in life, and that is as close to a universal law as I can suggest.
Yeah.
So don't be a dick. Don't be rude. Don't not do favors for people. I know, yes, it's inconvenient for me to bike holding fucking pizza, but if one of my kids asks me for pizza, I'll get it, because I want us to lead a life that way where you do shit for other people.
Right.
But say no to engagements and events, social outings, in contacts that you just really don't want in your life,
Right.
that are not nourishing. And that has been so important to me. I have sometimes agreed to do something and then the details got really complicated, or the contract was really sucky, unexpectedly so. And rather than fighting this battle and rolling this rock up a hill, I've just said, I'm not going to do this. And it's euphoric. So I want to ask people to think about that. It's not a license to be selfish, because there's reciprocity in this world.
Right.
But really think about what you want to say no to, and be active and courageous about it.
Yeah.
But courageous.
Yeah. That's great. Great ideas. I'm definitely gonna. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the older I get, the more I say no than I used to, for sure. But that's part of being building a career early on. You want to say yes to everything, and that's kind of a good attitude to have, I think, early on.
Yeah,
but there's a point where it's like you can start saying no now, and by saying no, you end up not only feeling better, but you end up further along somehow. You end up getting better opportunities in a weird way.
It's totally mysterious. I think that many salesmen have had the experience that they make 100 calls, they get nowhere. And then one order comes in that totally makes their week. But everybody says they wouldn't have gotten that one order had they not made the 100 calls. I don't know what the relationship is, but it's there.
Right.
And likewise, the relationship that you're describing, which sort of is almost inverse, but equally valid, by saying no to the thing you don't want, you open the door to the thing you do.
Right.
And I've never known an artist to disagree with that. And nobody can say why. It's very mysterious.
Yeah. And I even think on a physical, practical level, when I left the film industry, I had a good career. I was at the top of my field and as a sculptor in effects. And, but by leaving the film industry, which was hard to do because the money was good. And I'd spent 15, 20 years there right out of high school. And, leaving that, being willing to leave that, I became like way more respected by everybody in the industry.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I feel, I feel like I'm treated with more respect now, whereas I was more, I was respected.
And how do you understand that?
What's that?
How do you understand that phenomenon?
I don't know. It could be just a matter of simple, when you say no and people know they can't have you easily, that suddenly you become more valuable in a way because people know that you won't just do whatever when you're in a shop, you're working 40 hours a week, you do whatever they put in front of you. You're like kind of a factory worker in a way. They say make a gorilla head or something, and then you do it, and then and it's like you just kind of do whatever they tell you to do. And once I left, it's like people realized I turned jobs down. I could have gone back and I took one or two, but I've turned all kinds of jobs down, and I feel like I've my status just as an artist has risen. I don't know. I think it's because, there's a sense of when you're a worker at a job and you take whatever you get, when you leave that situation and you say, no, I'm not going to do it anymore. that people want you more in a weird way. It's almost like this principle of when artwork sells in a gallery, it's like, putting a red dot on a painting next to a painting shows that it's sold. People want it more when they see they can't have it.
That's so funny. And yet you were saying, and this has been my experience, at least early in your career, it is necessary to say yes a great deal to build CV, build your track and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I do agree with. I mean, I say yes to damn near everything. I would do podcasts that were conducted, with a can and a string, practically for all the listeners. But but it did help me hone my craft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, if you remain attached to that, it's poison. The medicine becomes poison.
Right. Yeah. There's like a natural progression. You need to kind of like sense where you need to be and where you need to go and when it's time to, but it's hard. It's hard to say no to people, especially when you're, I don't know, you feel for people and you want to be a good person and you want to make everybody happy. It's like, it's hard to say no, but it's a skill like any other that you have to develop.
And I would hope, that listeners don't necessarily hear this as just a career thing, because you can do this with your social relationships. I've always said that it's vastly better to be nobly alone than in compromised company. And I really believe that with all my guts.
Yeah.
With all my guts,
Yeah. Yeah. That's, definitely. Okay. Last thing before we go, I wanted to ask you is, okay. I know you're kind of like, on the left or whatever, we're artists, we're creative people. We're generally creative people are kind of on the left of the spectrum, liberal, left, whatever you want to call it. There's all these different terms now. There's shit lib. There's, it's like,
I don't even know what that means.
I know. It's like,
I'm that.
Yeah. Shit lib is like, is like a Democrat, I think. We're like more traditional. Well, anyways, it's stupid.
Yeah.
But, what I see people now that I like, on podcasts and stuff, that are kind of like personalities and we share political views, but they are so atheistic and anything outside of scientific materialism is just like viewed as complete bullshit. Like no credibility. They give it no credibility whatsoever. And so, and I imagine, people like this as well. It seems like in that circle, there's a lot of that. That's one of the things about the left. It feels to me is that there's a lot of like atheism, which is like understandable as kind of pushback to religious upbringings and stuff that people have, and as a response to that. So I don't know. I'm just curious your take on that, your thoughts on that, and I don't know. I feel like it's dumb, but I feel like I wish I could make them see. I wish I could tell them, and it's like you can't. You can't.
I've encountered a lot of that. I have encountered exceptions to it as well. I think I've encountered some lefties who secretly read Think and Grow Rich, and they understand that this can be used to concretize ideas. It just doesn't have to conform to whatever your immediate cultural touch points are. And if you want to tear the cover off because you're embarrassed by the title, be my guest. But don't denude yourself of ideas. Don't close up ideas. In fact, in Modern Occultism, I write about William Burroughs and Brian Geisen talking about reading Think and Grow Rich and how much it meant to them. And I thought, if you go on some snobbery trip that you don't read self-help, or you don't read occultism, or you don't read this, or you don't read that, who cares, man? You're just closing yourself off from possibilities that could expand your power. And it's ridiculous. But do whatever you want. I think the reason for the problem, if it is a problem, that you're identifying, or the situation, is that the central ethic of modernist philosophy is that everything has an antecedent. There's a hidden antecedent behind everything. So for Freud, it's childhood trauma. For Marx, it's economics. For Newton, it's movement and motion of cosmic bodies. For William James, it's self-image. For Darwin, it's biology, biological orderly development of life. And the excitement of the modernist culture is that we can peel back the layers of the onion and get onto the guts of what's the engine, what's fueling this. And modernity was so influenced by Freud, by Marx, both of whom took very, very negative views of religion as an organized culture, movement, social organizer. And so everything kind of got thrown out and attributed to worldly functions that we could map out in a physicalist fashion. And Freud, even though he was actually very sympathetic to ESP research, and his sympathies didn't become fully aired until after his death, because some of his estate keepers and his English biographer, Ernest Jones, thought that these sympathies would be critically compromising. Even though Freud was in fact sympathetic to parapsychology and very interested in parapsychology, and wrote in fascinating tones about parapsychology, some of this wasn't published until post-death. And the whole modernist culture has taken as its gambit that Marx, Einstein, Freud were largely right, and so you have time space, you have psychology, which is impacted by hidden neuroses and traumas, and you have economics, and those are the names of the game.
Right.
And everything else is mystery, delusion, opiate. And so the religious, the spiritual, the occult were relegated to belonging to yesterday and serving as blinders rather than windows to the modernist subculture. I've encountered it myself. The world that I grew up in, I mean, I read a little about this in the book Uncertain Places. If the people that I claimed as heroes when I was a kid were still alive and saw that I was writing in areas of the occult, they'd be like, well, Horowitz has just gone off his fucking rock. And there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. But it is a feature of modern intellectual culture. There are also remarkable exceptions. I meet remarkable individuals who fit the same intellectual framework and who are engaged with Crowley or Napoleon Hill or what have you, and they feel indelibly that there's some truth there, and that's their approach to life. It's usually quiet and it doesn't get written about very much. But the ticket of entry to mainstream letters is disavowal of the extra-physical. So if you're writing about ESP, to first disavow, well, it's all bullshit, even if you don't feel that way. Right. And there's people I know who do that because they want to enter mainstream letters, and so they will pay the price of disavowal, even though in private they're like, yeah, there's some pretty fucking interesting stuff, in this ESP.
They've said world. They've said that to you, like
absolutely.
Literally.
Absolutely. I could name, and I won't do it because of privacy. But I can name a famous fucking writer who disavows in public and in private is like, yeah, there's some weird shit out there.
Oh my God.
It can all be, and it's like, well, why aren't you talking about this? I know independent scholar of religion who is interested in a particular work of channeling, and he said to me, don't tell anyone about this. And I'm like, dude, your privacy, I'll fucking honor it, but it's like, you're checking out soon. Like, at what point, you're never going to tell the world that you're interested in this. If you did, maybe it would open up some interesting discussions. But, people, they protect reputation and they pay the fee of entry.
Yeah,
I would never do that, and that's why I miss being in mainstream media more, because it has such reach, and yet I'm also happier not being in mainstream media because I will not issue that disavowal.
Yeah. This is the punk rock. I mean, it's like, it's just like punk rock. It's like, you're not going to sacrifice your beliefs to get a big record deal. You know what I mean? It's just, it's the same.
I can't. But I'm just not going to write about shit. I spend the first 5 pages of modern occultism talking about what it means to be a believing historian. And the fact is, most historians are believing historians. They have a point of view.
Right.
And if you find your way to writing about a movement that you weren't just born into, that point of view was shaped along the road of a journey. And I think people should be transparent about that, but it's up to the individual. I prefer the transparency.
Well, the only thing you can do, I guess, in hearing you talk, occurred to me is, as far as you want to tell people, try something, try it. There's simple things you can do to try to test it, but and you hope that they will, because if people try it, they'll see that it's real. Like if they try a sigil or whatever, there's different things you can do that are pretty easy. But it doesn't, it's, it almost feels like in a lot of ways it's genetic. whether you're a believer, it's just like who you are. So it's maybe pointless to, but maybe that's not true. But point was, I guess what we're doing now is kind of all you can do. And what you're doing is you're writing books about it. You know, we're talking about it on a podcast. I'm not embarrassed about it. I talk about it all the time. I feel like if there's something of service I can do, that is to talk about this stuff in a way that I'm not embarrassed about. I don't give a shit if people believe me or not, you know. And it's like,
yeah, I mean, one has to reach that point. I've seen people go their whole careers without ever reaching that point. I don't think it's a particularly happy place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't net them the things that they want. People hide things because they feel if they reveal them, it'll hurt them. But then they might not get those things they want anyway, and they've lived a life of hiding. So you may as well just throw it to the wind at one point and just be out there, you know, wave your freak flag or whatever it is you want to call it.
Yeah. But I mean, that's what you're doing with your work. It's like you're I don't know. It feels to me, I'm sure this is true, that you're doing this as a service to help this cause.
Oh, there's that word.
I know. I had to bring it up.
We got to do another episode.
I know, another episode. That dream was weird because I had a dream where it said that someone told me that, and it was like totally random. Anyway, beside the point.
No, but I'm down for we can open that up again another week.
Yeah, we should.
I may have some cultural blockages with it.
But to me, you are doing that service with your work, because, you know, you could probably make more money writing. You could probably take it to an extreme level. If you start, you could probably become I'm a disaffected liberal that's become a conservative. That's the thing. That's what they do.
I know, right?
That's the grift.
A friend and I mapped that out once. Like, you know, have a handicapped person, attack the handicapped.
Yeah.
You know, that's what our culture loves. You know?
But that's how these people make money. All these right wingers now. It's like, I used to be on the left and the left left me and blah, blah. You could do that with your books and probably sell more books. But
probably.
You don't want to do that because you believe in what you're doing. And that's, you know, to me, that's that you're serving this idea that you want to get out there because you believe in it and you think it's true and you think could be helpful to other people and you're interested.
It's an extension of self. I mean, the only art worth producing is an extension of self. And what am I, you know, if I'm not telling the truth? It's hilarious. You know, I have these pseudo skeptics who come to me sometimes and they're like, you know, Horowitz is just doing it for the money. And it's like, oh, yeah, right about ESP research. That is the golden ladder to wealth in this country. And one time I had only revealed this several weeks ago, so I feel like I can talk about it more freely. But after the pseudo-skeptic James Randi died, I wrote a very harsh counter-obituary of James, and I would do the same thing again because I think he lacked integrity. And I felt a counter voice needed to be added to the mix of mostly heroizing obituaries from the Guardian to the New York Times to Rolling Stone, you name it. Everybody just, you know, was showering him with garlands. And I thought, let's have a voice of dissent here. So I did it. And some guy wrote to me and said, how does it feel to get paid for this? You know, must feel nice.
Oh my God.
I never said so at the time, but I was never paid for it. I didn't earn a dime off of it. Nobody wanted it. Nobody in the mainstream wanted it. I brought it everywhere. I couldn't even get people to you know, respond to it.
Wow.
I guess they thought it was gauche writing, you know, this counter obituary. I have no idea. Anyway, I brought it to Boing Boing and I published it for free. I would do it again. I worked long and hard on that puppy.
Yeah.
So, you know, people who are cynical only see themselves. And I hear it all the time. You know, the cynics are like, I was defending Michael Aquino recently, and I expect to defend Michael Aquino in the future, dedicate significant section to him in the book. He's been the subject of a really weird ass QAnon adjacent conspiracy.
Yeah, I know. I've read a lot of stuff about him.
Just preposterous.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But in any case, I think he was a great religious theorist, and I write about him in the new book. And someone again made a comment to the effect of like, you know, well, he does this for money. And it's like, oh yeah, there's, you know, people just throw money at you. And, you know, the United States, when you defend recently deceased Satanist, you know.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, easy money, baby. That's how we do it here. You know, so it's just so, you know, ridiculous. But cynics only see themselves.
Yeah.
So the artist, in my estimation, has to put him or herself out there, and that's what we do.
Yeah, I think that's in a way. I think that's it's the proof of purchase seal that you have integrity, is that you are doing what you love because you believe in it, even though it's not going to make you a bunch of money. Again, it goes back to the punk thing. It's like same with same with what I'm doing. It's like, you know.
Yeah.
Who's going to buy this shit?
Well, once in a while you fucking record Rock the Casbah, and then suddenly everybody likes it.
Yeah, right.
You know, I wrote it one night, you know, while I couldn't sleep, and someone else knows.
Yeah, that's the natural way, you know?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, anyway, okay, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate you taking the time. It's super great talking to you. Yeah.
Always. I can't wait for our thing. And so let's see. It's Chet and Mitch, Wednesday, the 21st.
Yes.
We're such slick marketers. I love it.
I'm going to have it in the intro. I'm going to have it in the intro too.
My shit, Friday the 23rd or the 22nd, I think. You know, I don't know. Figure it out. Go online.
It's the 22nd. 20. I don't know. Maybe
it's scary how adept we are at marketing.
I'll look it up and I'll do it in the intro. So I'll say it in the intro.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometime or another, we'll be there.
You should come if you're in the LA area. It's going to be super fun. The place is amazing. PRS is awesome, and
that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be so cool. So I'm really excited about it. Really excited.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for coming on. Man. I appreciate it always. Love talking to you, and appreciate your friendship. And
likewise. Thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you. And all we have to do is don't hang up, but just say goodbye to the audience somehow. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.